right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our panel discussion with a bunch of ecosystem folks. The general topic today is why build on an L2. We have a lot of representatives from really great projects across the Scroll ecosystem. And I'll give everyone time to introduce themselves in just a second. But if you're watching this, you're probably aware that Scroll has launched, and you're probably aware that we are an L2 on Ethereum. We're looking to help scale Ethereum by giving users and developers the same secure EVM experience, but with cheaper gas costs, higher transactions, or faster transactions, higher throughput, all that good stuff. But Ethereum is only as great as the ecosystem of projects that are doing interesting work that can interact with one another, and that people can build off of, and that kind of data sharing and the financial primitives that can get built up in the ecosystem. So I think earlier in this live stream, we've talked about copy, paste, deploy, and really Scroll is just kind of here to set that stage, kind of prepare the soil, as it were. And so I'm super excited to have four wonderful folks that are coming from across the Ethereum ecosystem in order to address the question, why build on an L2? Maybe before we get deeply into that, though, we'll kick off our introductions. It would be great if everyone could just kind of start off with their personal and individual introductions and your background, your role in the space, and we'll get into everyone's respective projects here in a second. I don't know if we have the same order going around, but maybe we can start with copy paste.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I'm copy paste. I've worked as like a protocol developer on like actual blockchain nodes. I've worked on a couple compilers across the space. And I'm working now at Cog Finance, which is an isolated lending protocol, aiming to kind of fill that gap left by Rari with just permissionless isolated lending.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Mauricio, also known as Bunny. I'm the founder of CEO of Dora. We're a multi-chain block explorer and search engine. Scroll has been one of our incredible supporters, one of our first day supporters, honestly. And yeah, we mostly consist of trying to unify every single L1 and L2 out there. Because Scroll's very good EVM support, we've been able to integrate them very easily. And yeah, no, they're amazing. We really love them.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Pranav. I'm a senior solutions architect at EdgeNode, which is one of the core devs of the graph. And the graph is a middleware between dApp UI and a blockchain. So we have been looking into supporting Scroll because it's an EVM chain, and we have been definitely impressed by the way they have closely they have made the ZK EVM much more closer to the EVM design. So we've been looking to support Scroll for their indexing needs.
Yeah, and for me, I'm Nader. I work with Aave and Lens Protocol. I've been in the blockchain and Web3 space since April of 2021. Worked with Pranav for a little bit. Daniel was actually the first person that I interacted with in any type of event back the first couple of weeks that I was in the space. So it's really cool to be here with him. And I like this topic a lot. So excited to chat about it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. So yeah, let's start off just kind of like, I think we have interesting kind of cross-section of projects here, going from like block explorers to DeFi to social to indexing, right? Infra down to the app layer and the user layer. So maybe we can just even do the same order, like giving people a sense of like, for your project, not just what you're building, but how do you see L2s really figuring into what you're building?
Yeah, I mean, I think L2s are definitely like critical to like DeFi, just because like gas costs have always traditionally been like the barrier. Just especially towards like efficiency, like you can't have a DEX, for example. If gas costs are too expensive, then your prices will drift apart from other DEXs. And so with DeFi, it's just really important to us that it's just cheap for users to be able to do things like borrow or supply assets, because that also too affects like rebalancing your yields. If you're trying to yield farm across multiple different protocols or pools, it's really important that you can just cheaply move between pools. And that's one thing too we're looking at with using protocols like Yearn to balance between multiple different cog pairs. It's very useful for us that Scroll has such cheap gas costs that you can, really optimize your yield and not have to worry about spending like $20 to rebalance a Yearn vault. Um, it's also really great that it's bytecode compatible because we're developing in Viper. So, it's important that it's actually bytecode compatible and doesn't rely on some Solidity transpiler or other magic, because then that doesn't work as well for us, of course. Yeah.
Specifically in
Awesome.
the DeFi space, yeah, I'll jump into the other use cases in a bit, but like in the DeFi space, do you feel like the block time or the gas costs, do those affect like the core product or the features that you're building in your product, or is it more just
You cut out there a bit at the end.
mostly just wondering if there's some sort of thing that gets unlocked by the cheaper prices so that you can have additional product features, or is it mostly just that it becomes more accessible to do the things that maybe L1 DeFi made possible, but just not accessible to lots of users?
It's definitely a bit of both. I think we haven't seen a lot of the L2 native use cases emerge yet. Although with DeFi specifically, I think we've seen more like social apps like Friend Tech being a very good recent example, like actually be enabled. And then all the derivatives on top of that, because otherwise really wouldn't be worth it at higher gas costs. But then it also brings the accessibility more into line. I know Curve is probably a very good specific example because their gas costs are so high on mainnet. I believe it's like $90 to swap at significantly high gas prices. And so it does a bit of both for us. I think the one thing we're excited to do is like obviously compose more things together. I mean, a lot of multi-hop pool routing just isn't possible on L1 due to the high gas costs. Like for example, we allow you to generate like an arbitrary borrow position by borrowing from one pool and supplying it as collateral in another, and then borrowing from that pool. But chaining these together on mainnet would be like ridiculously expensive because you're thinking like $5 to $10 is like a hop, versus on Scroll that's like 5 to 10 cents, right, per swap. And so it's definitely huge in terms of what it enables. I mean, it allows you to like actually integrate with more things without adding costs every time you do.
Very cool. Cool. Bunny, I feel like your project's perspective is like fully in the L2 world. But yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about how you're seeing and strategizing about L2s.
Sure, of course. Can I also comment just really quickly on the DeFi side of things as well?
Yeah.
I was just checking on Dora, and yeah, like the last transaction, or I guess one transaction just happened like 2 minutes ago for a swap for Punk token and Rapid token. The entire cost for this multi-routing transaction was 0.13 ETH. And also, we've even had to go to the standpoint of us as a block explorer, be very intentional about the fact that, okay, we're actually unifying every single ecosystem out there, whether or not they are very EVM compatible, whether or not they're not as EVM compatible. With the case of Scroll, we very much, for internally, it was very much a copy-paste process of our standard template that we had created by supporting Scroll since the beginning. When it came for the Gordon integration, when it came to the support integration, now with this one, we spin up support for Scroll. Like we finish token, raw data, and also NFT indexing within the first like 12 hours, most likely. We have a 24-hour guarantee integration, but yeah, no, it was very, very fascinating how easy it was to support it. But going back to my one comment on DeFi, we were very intentional about okay, if we are trending towards a world in which block space and also just how many transactions are getting posted back into a block explorer in one. First of all, we need to make all this information very legible. We need to make sure that people are understanding what the information is getting produced on the chain. And then second of all, there's going to be a lot more zeros than we expected on, let's say, transaction fees. Transaction fees, like this one has 5 leading zeros before it even gets to whatever amount of fees the person actually spent. And we hadn't seen that working on any L1 up until now, or even an L2. Being able to actually get to that level of execution of, okay, we can go into any type of chain that we wanted, regardless of whether or not it's CKVM or it's an EVM. And even beyond that, when it comes to, we have also this unified database to actually be able to verify or guess the verification of a smart contract. Every single now transaction that we're seeing on Scroll right now is properly labeled already, just because they share the exact same ABI, a smart contract ABI. So from this standpoint, if there's a smart contract that we were able to verify first on mainnet, let's say for lending protocols and repaying something, now we already have very clear visibility into that, just because Scroll is just that compatible. And we really haven't had to make that many modifications, and I think that's fascinating. I don't think that this is something that we've seen in a lot of ecosystems out there.
Awesome. Love to hear it. Done a lot of work as a team to make that happen. So great to hear that it's coming across from the dev side.
And it shows. You can very much see it if you go to the front page on Dora, search on Dora. If you Google search on Dora or use any browser on it, we're the top result right now. You can go on our Scroll main page, and pretty much every single transaction there is properly contextualized.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Pranav, from your perspective, from the indexer's perspective, what are you doing to approach L2s? How are you thinking about this, and what's the strategy there?
Yeah, of course. As an indexer, you index data if people start using that particular chain, right? And a lot of layer ones, including Ethereum, right now have transaction fees from right now are low, like given every situation. But in days, there are days when it's like $100 or more, and people are hesitant to do most type of transactions. Example, like the social fi space in the Web3 world that is coming right now, the social the Web3 social space. People might want to do the likes or mint 10 profile if the Ethereum or any layer one or any chain faces $10 to $100. All right. So that experimentation plus that use case of Web3 goes away. As an indexer, if people are not doing transactions, you don't have anything to index. So for us, layer twos are as important as this industry to grow. And if people do more transactions, people do more state storage and everything on the layer whatever 1 2 3 4, then only we can have information to index and store. And it's really great that the time zero knowledge technology came into the Web3 space, started getting implemented, started getting into the EVM bytecode level data, and started getting into production with, for example, Scroll making that big mileage and stuff like that. So I personally feel that what Scroll is doing right now is something that the graph would love to support. And the reason we are doing that is because I feel that given that Scroll is as EVM as it can be and as ZK EVM as it can be, it will have a lot of transactions which are DeFi based, because again, there will be a lot of people looking for proofs of these things on the layer ones and don't want to capacitate themselves on the layer two. So that's first thing that I believe. There will be security proofs on layer ones that will make people do transactions on layer twos. Plus, there will be a lot of use cases in which you don't have to take care of the transactions XYZ ABC. And hence, the graph would love to support Scroll in coming days, given that the transactions can happen, the state can be stored, and everything is something which is possibly headway.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, Natter, coming over to Aave and Lens. I know Aave's on a handful of networks already, some of them L2s. Lens is, I believe, on Optimism mostly right now, but coming from a side chain before that. How are y'all approaching L2s, multi-chain world, and the rest of it?
Yeah, I think like when I first got into this space, I was super excited about all the possibilities and these ideas that people had. But in practice, when I started using the applications, I realized how limiting they were for most people. I mean, not only in terms of UX, but obviously in terms of like cost and even just accessibility and things like that. So, you know, L2 or any technology that makes the transaction costs cheaper are probably, right up there with the most important things that are happening right now in this space. I mean, if you try to access that world, it's just impossible to do when the transaction costs are thousands of times more for essentially what you would think of as like data storage. So I think that with what we've seen, happen over the last few years, and now what we're actually seeing in practice, you're now able to build out the types of applications that just weren't possible in the past, that are only made possible because of these lower cost networks and these more performant networks. I mean, even FriendTech is a good example, because Lens, FriendTech, you also have Forecaster, are kind of all like in a similar like vein, even though we're all different at the same time. These types of applications will enable scalability to millions of users, because we're all building on like infrastructure that is hybrid in some way, or we're just building on these, like most of us are just using like L2s in some way. We're using Polygon. We're also using Arweave, but we're using Bundler, which is kind of like an L2 on top of Arweave. And then with our new version of Lens V2, you'll be able to build cross-chain. So you'll be able to pretty much use any network that is in existence. So yeah, it's kind of like if this technology wasn't evolving to where it would be, I probably wouldn't be in this space right now, because it would just be too prohibitive. And yeah, it's kind of cool to see that all this stuff is actually coming to fruition. So hopefully, we'll be able to build out more applications that are just accessible to more people in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that accessibility one is a huge one, and there's so much work to be done across the stack, right? But I think block space is definitely one of the places to start. And I don't know, shout out also to Bunny here. Kind of, I think Dora is really reassessing what a block explorer can look like for humans that are interacting with it, as opposed to just maybe developers or programmers. So
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. I had a question here a little bit about like the technological interaction with Scroll, and I think a handful of you have kind of already mentioned it. But is there anything else that folks would want to add along the lines of like experience so far? I think everyone here is deployed on Scroll Sepolia, and now with mainnet live, what are the plans moving forward?
We've already deployed on mainnet, and it's been great. It's been very simple to do, and like setting up all of our liquidation infrastructure was just very easy to do with scrolls like L2 Geth. It's pretty much identical to running a Geth node, actually, if not simpler, because you don't need the consensus client. So I mean, it's Scroll's been great to deploy on.
I would also want to add that GraphNode is EVM compatible, so it takes EVM calls. For example, ETH_call, get blocked by hash, stuff like that. Although that does not mean that the Graph ecosystem only supports EVM chains. It supports non-EVM chains through Firehose substream route. But for EVM specific chains, GraphNode is directly compatible. And with the Scroll Sepolia, it has never been an issue. So kudos to you guys to making the ZK EVM as close to the layer 2.
I think from our side, a lot of the complexity of actually having to readjust our infrastructure to fit a CKVM, like we've integrated a couple other CKVMs in the past, but we had to have a very close collaboration with, let's say, the node operators to actually ship the responses that we would expect from their node. But in the case of Scroll, it was very non-trivial. It was very trivial integration, I'd say. After we made the initial evaluation of, hey, does this actually fit Get? And the answer is yes, it does.
Cool. All right, I believe we lost Nader here, but I think we can kind of just keep running here. I want to talk a little bit about, ecosystem growth, right? We have Scroll. I view all of y'all as part of the Scroll ecosystem, and I feel like your ecosystem for your projects is, part of Scroll's growth as well. So, what does the future look like for each of your ecosystems? Where is it headed? And please do lots of shilling with this question. For users and devs, what call to actions do you have? How should they get involved if they want to get involved with your project?
I mean, for us, just reach out, like however you can. GitHub issues, Twitter, Discord, whatever you can. Carrier pigeon, on-chain messages, from hacker addresses. Well, we accept it all. As far as like ecosystem from our perspective, DeFi's really been missing, like almost the Godfather protocol, which is willing to coordinate with other protocols for like integrations and such. Um, like right now, DeFi is very siloed. You have like Uniswap, which almost has like an Apple approach to branding, and that none of our competitors exist even. Um, and I think with COG, our goal is really to integrate with as many people as we can and really work together. And like by this, we actually mean like concrete. We'll let you leverage your LP tokens. Is one thing we have planned. We plan to support pretty much every yield-bearing asset as collateral, for like almost self-repaying loans. So we're really just looking forward to integrate absolutely anything and everything we can to either provide leverage or let you use it as collateral. Yeah. Yeah, I guess my call to action would be go leverage long ETH on COG today.
Not financial advice. Maybe.
Awesome. I think one of there's a big reframing that we are trying to do within Dora, which is that Explorer should not be a technical tool only. It shouldn't be a tool that is exclusively for power users. Explorer is honestly one of the first layers of contextualization that people have whenever they interact with any semblance of launching data. So because of that, we have a few call to actions that become very apparent with that. Is that one, if it is truly the first layer of contextualization for any on-chain data, Explorer should be a public good. Explorer should be something that anyone can access, that is very collaborative with the on-chain development team. And of course, beyond that is, if everyone should be able to access it, that also implies that everyone should be able to access it in as many, let's say, localizations, geographies as we're able to support. Right now, let's say, like one of our most visited pages on Scroll was, on Dora was a scroll in Mandarin specifically, like the localized version of Dora. And that becomes incredibly apparent with the fact that, okay, everyone, like searching, not even for on-chain data, but searching data in general is something that is innate to every single person out there. Everyone wants to find out information about something, and maybe they want to find out information about something, they probably want to also interact with it. So that is, if you want to go on Dora, if you want to search on-chain data, go on Dora, search for Scroll. If you have any requests, supports for it, you can contact us at search on Dora on Twitter. Also DM me directly and on @Conejo Capital on Twitter as well. We always try to respond. We respond hopefully within the first 24 hours. But sometimes DMs get flooded, but still we always get to people whenever we can. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Yeah, with the graph, I would say that the graph has been indexing block. Sorry for the disturbance. So with the graph, I would say the graph has been powering Web3 dApps since, like, I would say 3 years. All the top DeFi dApps in the Web3 ecosystem have been putting all their data on the shoulders of the graph, and the graph has been definitely taking that load up and serving the Web3 space in general. I would say we had started with the Graphs hosted service as our first, product as a MVP, and that got a lot of good, I would say, traction. many decentralized application, DeFi, NFT got into the graph through that particular thing. And that was kind of a source validation that GraphNode is definitely an open source software which could be used for blockchain data indexing in general. And we wanted to decentralize that software given that we had created an open source nature of it. And that's where we launched the Graph Network back in 2021. And since the launch, given that we had the hosted service still there are like about 1,000 subgraphs already deployed who are rather moving from the hosted service to the network to enjoy the decentralized indexing infrastructure in general. I would say Scroll's ecosystem would help the graph grow even further, given that Scroll is zk EVM and many new applications can be built on it, and of course use subgraphs for getting the data. But on the other hand, I would also say Scroll's ecosystem would go because of the graph, because there are many dApps which are not possible without the power of subgraphs indexing blockchain data. That's kind of a shameless shill, but I would say, given the way the graph indexes data and subgraphs are becoming a standard in the Web3 space, I think the graph node software and the whole graph ecosystem might be required to make a dApps use case for getting information on chain. So of course, we are really happy to support as well as see how the graph network is going to evolve. The Scroll Sepolia is live on the Graph Studio, which is not the network. Similarly, the Sepolia mainnet will be live on the studio initially, and there is a process to make the integration live on the on the network, have the rewards. More indexers support the Sepolia. Support Scroll mainnet on the network, but that definitely has step-by-step process to go forward.
Very cool. And with Nader not here, I'll just tell users and devs, go try building on Lens for a little bit. Go try to make something cool with Aave. They're off. Obviously, well-known projects. I don't think they need to be shielded or anything. But all right. So I think on the Scroll side, my little call to action here is going to be, if you are a developer or a hacker watching this, come hack with us at a hackathon. Try deploying something this week. Hopefully it's easy to use and accessible for you. We've got lots of resources on our developer documentation. And if anything, if we've learned anything in this call, hopefully you won't run into any issues while deploying. And yeah, I think let's do one last kind of call out for everyone for individual ways to connect with you if someone wants to follow you on Twitter or what's not. So.
I do have a very good Twitter. Follow me at Control-C then V. And also check out Cog, cog.finance. We have a really good lo-fi button too you can press, and it's like good background music. So even if you don't want to take out a loan, you can think about it while listening to our lo-fi. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if you have any requests for Dora, or if you want to make sure that your application is getting really contextualized on Dora and so on and so forth, yeah, just hit us up at @search on Dora, or also hit me up personally on @Conejo Capital on Twitter. And yeah, we'll make sure to add support for your applications and make sure that everyone can access data from your application whenever they want.
For last, I would say, if you're building a decentralized application, make sure your information that you're putting from the blockchain to your application is also in a decentralized format. And I would say the way to get started on that is to build a subgraph. And with Scroll and a lot of dApps, of course, coming on Scroll, I would, of course, have a CTA for them to build a subgraph for their dApp, as well as reach out to the graph Discord, or you can always message me on Twitter @Pranav the graph. That's on Telegram. If you want to message me on Twitter, it's I am Pranav _. So yeah, I'll see you on the other side.
All right, and thanks y'all so much for being part of our early ecosystem. It's been great getting this far with you, and really excited to keep growing it beyond this point. And thanks for joining the panel.